Thank you very much. Excellencies, Ministers of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. We have come to the end of the 7th Joint Annual Meeting of the Economic Commission for Africa Conference of African Ministers of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, and African Union Conference of Ministers of Economy and Finance. It is a great honor for me to make these closing remarks at this important conference. As one famous poet, T.S. Eliot, once said, "To make an end is to make a beginning. The end is where we start from." As we conclude this conference, which was organized around the theme, Industrialization for Inclusive and Transformative Development in Africa, these poets' words give us something to think about as we prepare to set off home, hopefully to make a new beginning when we return to our respective countries. The conference sessions were carefully designed to discuss topical issues around the concept of industrialization. In their own way, all the sessions have been as observing to each other with the high quality of their content and presentations and the resulting discussions. I therefore found it difficult to state preference with regard to the benefit I have derived from any particular session. However, certain points stood out. There was a general consensus that industrialization should be the backbone of Africa's transformation agenda. This should be underpinned by credible and coherent industrial development policies that clearly identify the islands of success or growth poles on the respective comparative or competitive advantages of different regions across the continent. There was a wide agreement on the need for skills revolution to ensure alignment between education system and industrial goals, and to establish research and development capacity to support industrial development. Throughout the discussions, there was a common theme of smart protectionism. Countries have relied on some form of protectionism to gradually develop strategic domestic industries to allow these industries to reach a certain level of maturity before opening them up to global competition. The issue of regional integration featured prominently throughout the discussions. Infrastructure for transformation, trade facilitation, logistics, gateways and trade hubs were identified as key to ensuring increased intra-African trade, reducing cost of doing business, and encouraging increased exports of our continent. The meeting identified political will or determination as one of the key competitive advantages of Africa today. The discussions further acknowledged the role of the private sector and public sector in the industrialization process. The concept of developmental state would therefore be relevant to Africa to encourage investment in sectors considered risky and that would ordinarily not attract private investment. Acknowledging the glaring institutional capacity deficit in the area of investment and industrialization, the meeting agreed that government should be a lead player in building the institutional capacity, both in the public and private sectors, and should develop clear and credible policies that communicate a vision of industrialization to the private sector. To make African capital to work for African development, the meeting underscored the importance of harnessing sovereign wealth funds, reconsider the role of national development banks and central banks could play in advancing the industrial agenda. While acknowledging the importance of technology in economic development, much concern has been expressed to strike an optimal balance between mechanization and promotion of labor-intensive industries, especially where the poorest of the poor are concerned. The discussions have further reminded us that industrialization is not only about technology, but more about the mindset. There is need to build appropriate mental construct to get the planning right that will build Africa's own capacity in technology development. On a more celebratory note, the meeting has acknowledged that African countries' capacity to manage their own economies has improved over the years. In this regard, growth that Africa has experienced is not just by coincidence. The challenge is to focus on the quality of growth, move it from being a commodity and raw materials-based growth to the next critical level of industrialization where opportunities and jobs are created. Honorable Ministers, on alternative sources for financing our union, I personally yesterday left this room with a big sigh of relief. We registered an important milestone with the resolution on mobilizing funding for our union. It has been a long, long time coming. I would like to applaud us for finally going beyond study stage and on moving towards implementation stage. This will send a very strong signal of political will in favor of regional integration and economic development in general. We have had a lot of fascinating discussions to digest over the past 2 days, and I'm sure you are exhausted and are looking forward to returning to your countries to reunite with our beloved ones. This is quite understandable. Allow me to thank those who have been involved in the organization of this conference, which you'll agree has been a resounding success. On behalf of the African Union Commission, I would also like to thank the government and people of the Federal Republic of Nigeria for hosting this important conference. And to our sister Ngozi, our able and gracious host, for managing us and managing the deliberations in such an able manner. Please give an applause of hands. My special thanks also go to my brother, Carlos, for the ever-abiding partnership and above all, his passion and strong belief in an emerging strong Africa. And to you, honorable ministers, for your active participation and guidance that has brought us to this point that we have produced this work that will guide us in the coming days. And may I simply say, thank you, bon voyage, and that we meet again soon. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, the Deputy Chairperson of the AU, for those remarks. I now call on Mr. Carlos Lopes, the UNECA Executive Secretary.
Honorable Ministers, delegates, it is my pleasure to use this opportunity to basically thank all that have contributed to the success of this meeting. But before I do so, let me just mention some of the features that make this meeting historic, apart from the fact that we have the privilege of holding it in Abuja. As I was mentioning to Minister Ngozi, we had 1,850 registrations for this meeting. This is an absolute record in the history of the Conference of Ministers of Finance, Economy and Planning. We also had 13 side events, another first, including a caucus of central bank governors that have produced a wonderful piece of work in the form of their communique, which really moves the discussion about contributions of central banks for transformation. We also had the first regional coordination mechanism meeting coupled with the Conference of Ministers. This is the regional coordination mechanism between the United Nations and the African Union, and this was the number 15th edition, but by far it was one of the most exciting, attracting the senior leadership of both organizations in the persons of the chairperson of the African Union and the Deputy Secretary-General of the United Nations that co-chaired the meeting, but also the unprecedented presence of 6 United Nations Under-Secretary-Generals, 5 Assistant Secretary-Generals, and also on the AU side, apart from the chairperson, the deputy chairperson himself, who has been a passionate and engaging partner in this endeavor, and a series of commissioners and the NEPAD CEO. We also had the energy ministers meeting that the minister was very much interested in making happen. And I'm very pleased that together with NEPAD and ourselves, it was possible to make quite an important dent in terms of how we structure the discussion ahead when, with the initiatives, many initiatives that are being undertaken in this field. We also launched our economic report on Africa, on dynamic industrialization. For me, this is a report that intensifies quite significantly our knowledge about how to go into the promotion of industrial policies that respond to the challenges of today in Africa. Last year, we made the case for commodity-based industrialization. This time, we go deeper in terms of understanding some of the pitfalls, but also opportunities that are ahead. My thank yous go first to the outgoing Bureau of the Conference of Ministers, led by Minister Mabry, who did a wonderful job of supporting the construction of a positive agenda for both ourselves and the African Union as part of this joint effort. I would like also to thank the incoming Bureau for all the passion that they have put into the job as soon as they were elected. And proof of that was the way some of the discussions, including the finance of the AU, demonstrated the commitment of member states to really push ahead. I would like to thank the experts, our experts that so diligently prepared all the documents and resolutions and allow for a smooth transition into the ministerial meeting. I would like to thank the press that has been present in big numbers. My vote of thanks go also to the translators and interpreters that have done a wonderful job of making this meeting not only within the timing that we had allocated, sometimes difficult for them, but also very smooth in terms of understanding each other. So I would like to ask a round of applause for them. Finally, I would like to thank the ECA and the AU team that have worked together for months to make this conference possible, and for us to be working under conditions that were quite pleasant in terms of the quality and the substantive preparations. But of course, the most important has been the contribution of the government of Nigeria. Not only it made possible for the presence of dignitaries of high rank, such as President Johnson Sirleaf, that allow us to have a close and direct interaction on the post-2015 Common African position that she's leading, but also President Thabo Mbeki, that came to present the illicit financial flows status report. And we were also graced by the President himself coming, President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, to be part of our deliberations, but more importantly, to bring to this discussion the experience of Nigeria, but also a call for action, and making sure that we are not distracted too much with discussions, and asking us to just go and implement all the things we are discussing. And this has also allowed us to have first-hand experience about how the leadership of a country can make a difference in terms of industrialization. We have been very fortunate to count on the presence throughout these days of Minister Bashir Yuguda, and more importantly, all the support that we have received from the government of Nigeria through the chair of this conference. And also because of her charisma, because of her network, because of what she represents in Africa's transformation, Minister Ngozi is not just a gracious host, and we know that for having been here all this week and witnessing firsthand all that has been done once more, but also Minister Ngozi is the best chair we can have in this year where we are going to be confronted with so many challenges. This is not a normal year ahead. It is the year where we are going to approve the successor arrangements for the post-2015 agenda. It's also the year where we are going to finalize the Agenda 2063 document. It's also the year where we are going to start the work on the African Development Goals. So for all these reasons, we needed really a very powerful chair, and we got it. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Mr. Lopes for those kind words. You know, I have to joke here. When I was elected, I said I didn't know if it was congratulations or commiserations. It sounds like commiserations now. But thank you very much for those words. I think it remains really for me to make some final comments. Well, honorable ministers, colleagues, delegates, I want to start first and foremost by thanking all of you for accepting our invitation and coming here. What makes a meeting? The meeting is not just about those who organize it, but it's about those who participate. And I want to echo every word that both Mr. Nwencha and Mr. Lopes said. And that is that I think this has been an extraordinary meeting. Usually at the end of the meetings, we don't see anyone in the hall. But if you look around this hall, you see that it's still almost full. And that speaks to the commitment of the delegations and the seriousness with which you have taken this work. So I really want to commend you for your participation, your passion. The quality of the participation is what struck me this time in this meeting. The quality of discourse and the fact that we came out with some very specific recommendations and resolutions which speak to the issues that we care about. I think that for me has been the most uplifting part of this meeting. Concrete resolutions on industrialization and competitiveness, financial inclusion, illicit flows, agricultural transformation, gender equality. I could go on and on. It's a long list. And the African risk capacity. I think this is what makes for a good meeting, so that by the time we come out of here, people in the continent will realize that we were not just here talking, but you've got in the room policymakers who can take concrete ideas and also try to implement them at home. So that, I think, has really been a remarkable mark of this meeting for me. I also want to say, like Carlos and Mr. Wencha said, that having the dignitaries, I want to commend here the President of Liberia, President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, my own President, President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan. Why? They didn't just attend. They arrived from Abidjan at 2 a.m. and they barely got any sleep. And they were here bright and early in the morning. That shows a level of commitment to the Ministers of Finance, Economic Planning, to the AU and ECA, mark of seriousness that I also feel is unprecedented, and I really am very happy about that. Let me say what a delight it has been to work with the ECA and the EU. I want to strongly commend their teams, to thank Carlos, to thank the chairperson, and to thank the deputy chairperson and the commissioner. Your staff worked really hard and diligently. We had our tough moments, you know, in doing the planning. I'm sure Sandra can attest to that. But we also had very nice conclusions. I want to use this opportunity to thank my staff and thank my colleague, the Supervising Minister for Planning, Minister Bashir Yuguda, who is sitting here, who has shown unprecedented commitment. And had he not worked with me to help chair some of the meetings, it would have been, you know, again, quite a burden. He and his staff have been here supporting everything, and all the members of the Interministerial Committee. I must tell you that thanks to the Central Bank of Nigeria also for stepping up to the plate and helping to contribute to the cost of running the meeting. So I would like us to give these our staff who have worked so hard a big round of applause. I want to end by saying that the meeting is, the work is not finished because out of this meeting we've set up at least one working committee, and we've pledged ourselves to move forward on several of the areas that we've outlined. So we've got our work cut out for us. We've set a very high bar now in terms of the interactions in this meeting and what we come up with. And I am very hopeful that from now on we cannot slip below this bar, that we will continue to have a meeting that people will acclaim as the place to be. They have obviously done it this time by 1,850 people turning up. We mustn't let the quality slip. I want the word to go out to every minister that did not participate, of which there are few, that they missed something pretty important. I want to wish all of you a very safe journey to your destination, and thank you one more time for a wonderful set of meetings here. Thank you.